Okay, Wildcats, we're at journal page 64. Choosing a method for solving quadratic equations. All right, example 1. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you choose it. Irrational answers may be left in radical form or approximated with a calculator. Round to 2 decimal places. All right, so this one, factoring should be used because there are not many factors to check. So factoring 2 parentheses. Now, in order to get x squared, we know that x and x. Now, here we need to figure out what numbers multiply to give you 14 combined to be negative 9. So negative 1 times negative 14 is positive 14. Negative 1 minus 14 is negative 15. That doesn't work. Okay, let's try negative 2 times negative 7 is positive 14. Negative 2 minus 7 is negative 9. That works. So our factors are x minus 2 and x minus 7. So set x minus 2 equal to 0, x minus 7 equal to 0. Add 2 to both sides. X equals 2. Add 7 to both sides. X equals 7. So x equals 2 and x equals 7. All right, go ahead and finish up example 1. All right, example 2. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Irrational answers may be left in radical form. 81x squared equals 196. Taking the square root should be used because b is equal to 0. Okay, so we have 81x squared equals 196. Okay, we're going to divide both sides by 81. 81 divided by 81 is 1. You get x squared equals 196 divided by 81. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, square root's plus or minus. So the square root cancels the squared. So you're left with x equals plus or minus the square root of 196 divided by the square root of 81. So x equals plus or minus. Let's go ahead and use our calculator to see what the square root of 196 is. So control square root 196. And let's go ahead and do control square root of 81. And now let's do 14 divided by 9, which does not reduce, okay? So this is plus or minus 14 divided by 9. All right, go ahead and finish up example 2. All right, example 3. Solve the quadratic by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Leave irrational answers in radical form. So completing the square should be used because it's not factorable, okay? So we have 4x squared minus 4x minus 2 equals 5. Now the first step, we need to add 2 to both sides. So we have 4x squared minus 4x equal to 7. Now we need to factor out a 4 first, which leaves 1x squared minus 1x equal to 7. Now to complete the square, we're going to divide this number by 2 and squared. So that's plus negative 1 divided by 2 squared. But if you add it to this side, you have to add to this side. But you're multiplying this by 4. So it's plus 4 times negative 1 divided by 2 squared. So then this becomes 4. We don't need to put 1 there, so it's x squared minus 1x plus 1/4 okay, equals 7 plus 4 times 1/4 okay. So then this becomes 4 parentheses, 2 parentheses, now this becomes 1, so 7 plus 1 is 8. So then that's x minus 1/2, x minus 1/2. So this becomes 4 times x minus 1/2 squared equal to 8. Now we're going to divide both sides by 4. That divides and becomes 1. So then you get x minus 1/2 squared equal to 2. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, that's plus or minus. That cancels. So then you're left with x minus 1 divided by 2 equals plus or minus the square root of 2. And then we're going to add 1/2 to both sides. This becomes 0. So x equals 1 divided by 2 plus or minus the square root of 2. So your answer is x equals 1/2 plus the square root of 2, and x equals 1/2 minus the square root of 2. All right, go ahead and finish up example 3. All right, example 4. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation of why you chose it. Your rational answers may be left in radical form. Factoring should be used because there are not many factors to check. So this one, we probably want to use the reverse box method. Okay, now first term is 5x squared, last term is 1. These terms need to combine to be 6x. Now you ask yourself, what makes 5x squared? Well, 5x times 1x. Now the only possible way to get 1 here is plus 1 and plus 1. Let's make sure this works. 1x times 1 is 1x. 1 times 5 is 5x. This combines to be 6x. 1 times 1 is 1. So our factors are 5x plus 1 times x plus 1 equal to 0. Okay, so set 5x plus 1 equal to 0, x plus 1 equal to 0. Subtract 1 from both sides. 5x equals negative 1. Divide both sides by 5. This divides and becomes 1. X equals negative 1/5. Here, subtract 1 from both sides. X equals negative 1. All right, go ahead and finish up example 4. All right, example 5. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Irrational answers may be left in radical form. Taking the square root should be used because b is equal to 0. So we can rewrite this as 5x squared. That is gone, so minus 15 equal to 0. we're going to add 15 to both sides. Okay, that becomes 0. You get 5x squared equal to 15. Divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. X squared equal to 3. Take the square root of both sides, plus or minus. That cancels. You get x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Okay, so x equals the square root of 3, and x equals the negative square root of 3. Okay, go and finish up example 5. All right, example 6. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Convert irrational answers into decimals for your final answer. Round to the 2 decimal places. Okay, the quadratic formula should be used because it's not factorable, and completing the square will be complicated. So this is your A value, this is your B value, this is your C value. The quadratic formula says x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, so we plug the numbers in. So x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 9 times negative 4 divided by 2 times 9. Well, that's x equals a negative times negative is positive, so that's 6 plus or minus the square root. Let's go ahead and plug the discriminant in the calculator. Let's delete our previous work. So parentheses, negative 6 squared minus 4 times 9 times negative 4 is 180. Okay, divided by 18. Okay, so x equals 6 plus the square root of 180 divided by 18, which equals, we can put that in our calculator. So to do that, we're going to press Control, divide, 6 plus Control square root of 180 divided by 18. Now that rounds to be 1.08. And then I can highlight, enter, change the plus to a minus, which would be negative 0.41. So x equals 6 minus the square root of 180 divided by 18 equals negative 0.41. All right, go and finish up example 6. All right, let's take a look at the next example. All right, example 7. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Irrational answers may be left in radical form or approximated with the calculator. Round your answer to 2 decimal places. Factoring should be used because it's easy to factor a quadratic expression when there is no constant term. So we have 5x squared minus 20x equals 0. Now, we can divide everything by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, so you're left with x squared minus 20 divided by 5 is 4x equals 0. Now we can factor out an x, which leaves x times x minus 4 equal to 0. So x equal to 0, x minus 4 equal to 0. Add 4 to both sides, x equals 4. So x equals 0 and x equals 4. All right, go ahead and finish up example 7. All right, example 8. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Irrational answers may be left in radical form or approximated with the calculator, round to 2 decimal places. Taking the square roots should be used because it's already expressed as a squared binomial and a constant. So we have x minus 4 squared equals 49. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, square roots plus or minus. The square root cancels the squared. You're left with x minus 4 equals, the square root of 49 is 7, so that's plus or minus 7. We're going to add 4 to both sides. So x equals 4 plus or minus 7. So x equals 4 plus 7, which is 11. And x equals 4 minus 7, which equals negative 3. So x equals 11 and x equals negative 3. Well, let's take a look at the next example. All right, example 9. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Irrational answers may be left in radical form. Taking the square root should be used because the equation can be easily converted into a squared binomial and a constant. So we have 2 times x plus 3 squared minus 6 equals 4. So the first thing I'm going to do is add 6 to both sides. That becomes 0. You get 2 parentheses x plus 3 squared equals 10. Divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. You get x plus 3 squared equals 5. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Remember, square root's plus or minus. Now, the square root cancels the squared, so you're left with x plus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 5. Last step, you're going to subtract 3 from both sides. X equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 5. All right, so x equals negative 3 plus the square root of 5, and x equals negative 3 minus the square root of 5. All right, let's take a look at the next example. Example 10. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Leave irrational answers in radical form. The quadratic formula should be used because the equation cannot be factored, and completing the square will be complicated. So this is A, this is B, this is C. So the quadratic formula says x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. X equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 7 times 11 divided by 2 times 7. So x equals a positive 4, because a negative times a negative becomes positive, plus or minus the square root. Let's go ahead and put the discriminant in the calculator. Let's clear out our previous work. Oop. So then that's control. Oh, we don't need the square root, we just need the discriminant. So negative 4 squared minus 4 times 7 times 11 is negative 292 divided by 14. Okay, so I believe we're just going to leave that as is. So x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 292 divided by 14. All right, go ahead and finish up example 10. All right, example 11. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Irrational answers may be left in radical form. The quadratic formula should be used because the equation cannot be factored, and completing the square would be complicated. So this is A, this is B, this is C. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 1 divided by 2 times 2. So x equals negative 4 plus or minus square root. So let's go ahead and put the discriminant in. So 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 1. So that's 8 divided by 2 times 2 is 4. Now, this is a unique situation in that we can reduce the square root of 8. When you can find a squared in a number, we can reduce it. So, good example, look at squares. So 1 squared is 1. That doesn't help us at all. But here's the issue. 2 squared is 4. That means there's a squared in the square root. So we can rewrite this as x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 2. Because 4 times 2 is equal to 8 divided by 4. So now we can rewrite this as x equals negative 4 divided by 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Whenever you're multiplying on the square, you can take them separately. The square root of 4 is 2 times the square root of 2, and that's divided by 4. Well, negative 4 divided by 4 divided becomes 1, so x equals negative 1 plus or minus 2 to 4 reduces to be 1/2 square root of 2. So x equals negative 1 plus or minus 1/2 times the square root of 2. All right, go ahead and finish up. Example 11. All right, example 12. Solve the quadratic equation by any means. Identify the method and complete the explanation on why you chose it. Rational answers may be left in radical form or approximated with a calculator, round to 2 decimal places. Factoring should be used because you must multiply by 2 to eliminate the fraction. So we're going to multiply everything by 2. Okay, 2 times 1/2 is 2 divided by 2, x squared. 2 times 6 is plus 12x, plus 2 times 11 halves is 22 divided by 2, and 2 times 0 is equal to 0. Now, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so you're left with x squared plus 12x plus 22 divided by 2 is 11 equal to 0. Now, x squared, 2 parentheses, equal to 0. X and x makes x squared. Now we need to figure out what numbers multiplied at 11 combined to be 12. So 1 times 11 is 11. 1 plus 11 is 12. So our factors are x plus 1, x plus 11. Set those equal to 0, x plus 1 equal to 0, x plus 11 equal to 0. Subtract 1 from both sides, x equals negative 1. Subtract 11 from both sides, x equals negative 11. So x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 11. All right, go and finish up example 11. All right, last example. Example 13. Indicate whether the following statements about finding solutions in quadratic equations with integer coefficients are true or false. Any quadratic equation with a real solution can be solved by using the quadratic formula. True. Any quadratic equation with real solution can be solved by completing the square. True. Any quadratic equation with real solution can be solved by factoring. False. Any quadratic equation with real solutions can be solved by taking the square root of both sides of the equation. That's false. If the equation can be factored, it has rational solutions. True. If the equation has only one real solution, it cannot be factored. False. All right, go and finish up your examples, start working on your assignment, and have a wonderful Wildcat day.